Committee meeting. My name is Barbara Blake. I'm the chair of this committee. If I can ask the committee to introduce themselves, starting with the vice chair, please.
Reg Rice, Tottenham Hill Councillor and vice chair of this committee.
Alex Worrell, councillor for Stroud Green.
Luke Colley-Harrison, Crouch End.
Lester Buxton, Crouch End.
Mark White, councillor for Tottenham Central.
John Bevan, Northumberland Park.
Esther Ovett, Northumberland Park.
Thank you. If the officers present can introduce themselves, please. Starting on my left.
Suzanne Timon, Climate Change Manager.
Elisabetta Tonazzi, Conservation Officer.
Matthew Barrett, Legal Services.
Rob Sosowski, Assistant Director for Planning, Building Standards and Sustainability.
Robbie McKnocker, Head of Development Management.
Samuel Uff, Planning Officer.
John McRory, Major Applications Team Leader.
Richard Truscott, Design Officer.
And Felicity Foley, Committees Manager.
Thank you very much. And some officers are in attendance virtually and they will introduce themselves when relevant. So we're now on to item 1. This meeting is being recorded. All registered speakers should be aware that they will be recorded for live or subsequent broadcast via the council's internet site or by anyone attending the meeting. Item 2 is the planning protocol. So members and speakers are requested to note the information set out at item 2 on the agenda. We have apologies for absence from councillors Nicola Bartlett and councillor George Dunstall. And we're now on to urgent business. There are no items of urgent business. No. Declarations of interest. Do members have any declarations of interest? No, thank you. So we're on to the item 6, which is the minutes. We're approving the minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of the meetings held on the 16th of January and February and the 6th of February 2023. Are those minutes agreed? Okay, thank you. Right, we will now consider the planning applications. So this is item 8. And it's the 44 to 46 Hampstead Lane. That's pages 1 to 82 in the pack, and the reference number is 2731. I won't read it out because it's in the pack. The recommendation is to grant permission, and I would just like to notify the committee that I did agree that we would have a third objector speaking tonight. So I would just want you to note that. So I'm now pass this to the planning officer, Samuel Uff, and Samuel's going to introduce the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, all. So I'm sure you already know this is 44 to 46 Hampstead Lane in Highgate. The application is for the demolition of the two existing dwellings and redevelopment of the site to provide 66-bed care home within the C2 use class. This will have an associated basement, 18 subterranean and forecourt parking spaces, ancillary flexible treatment room, and removal and replacement of 8 trees and associated works. So just a bit about the site here. The site is within the Bishop's area of the Highgate Conservation Area. This is shown in the yellow here. And grade 1 listed Kenwood House is located at the bottom of the screen here. And Kenwood House Gardens are also located around here. So the adjacent metropolitan open lands of Highgate Playing Fields is to the west, and Kenwood House Gardens to the south. Kenwood House Gardens also a site of special scientific interest. To the north of the site are the private roads that run perpendicular at Courtenay Avenue and Compton Avenue. And you can see to the white area on the screen is the out of borough at Barnet, and to the south of the site, on the southern side of Hampstead Lane, is Camden. So just to look at the setting, here you can see the two existing dwellings with their extensive forecourts and gardens and surrounding. The Hampstead Lane frontage is tree lined with extensive street trees here, as is Courtney Avenue down the side. Number 42, just to the side of the site, has been approved for demolition and rebuild, but is still in the existing form there. And Courtney Avenue to the south, you can see just in the bottom of the screen. And the bottom picture is a street view which shows the existing two dwellings. So in terms of the proposal, this will be for the demolition of the two existing buildings shown in the top drawing. This will be redevelopment for a 66-bed dementia care home in the C2 use class. This will have the appearance of two buildings with the glazed link in between as a functional requirement for linking the two sites. This is considered to be a good way of having functionality in it, and also a sympathetic massing. The design is within a contemporary interpretation of arts and crafts. A bit about the use would be that it's 24-hour nursing care, and does also have the treatment room, which is in the corner here. The site will provide the basement car park access on this side of the site. And that would be served by a dual car lift. The site would also include comprehensive landscaping and an uplift of 17 trees with a canopy net gain. You can see in the blue outline is on the right hand side. That's the approved permission at number 42, and the red is the existing massing of that building. So in terms of the principle of the use, the proposed care home has been determined to fall within the C2 use class as a managed care facility with no private ownership of the units. In terms of national, regional and local policy, they all highlight increasing demand for elderly care provision and specifically dementia care. The applicant has provided two needs assessments which have carried out with regard to national and local data. These have raised issues of the ageing population, increasing cases of dementia within society and the locality, and issues of quality of provision. These highlight local shortfall and substandard quality of the existing beds. Also that these are not future-proofed and/or not specialists for dementia care. They've also highlighted the shortcomings in the COVID-19 pandemic, where substandard rooms, lack of en suites and wet rooms, cramped facilities and internal layout issues really highlighted that those issues of cross-contamination between residents. In terms of the type and tenure, this is considered to be suitable for the area, and the applicant has committed to target this at Haringey residents as captured within the Section 106. Likewise, service provision within the site would be in the case of the 24-hour treatment, as well as cosmetic services that would be provided in-house and by visiting services. There would also be an NHS Section 106 contribution in terms of helping out local NHS services. There is no policy requirement for affordable housing for care facilities, as long as they comply with London Plan policy H13, which this would be required to do so. The loss of the two dwellings is compensated by the greater density of residential care provision that we would have. So in terms of the heritage impact, this is a obviously important consideration given that the site is within the Highgate Conservation Area, and within the Bishop's area, these are characterised by large detached dwellings in generous plots. The Conservation Officer has described the units as unrefined 1930s buildings, which have been categorised as neutral contributors. The case for the demolition is on the basis of the functional requirements for the care home use. and also the benefits of customising this design for that use. These have been weighed favourably in terms of the public benefit of that proposal, as has the high quality of the replacement buildings in terms of their architectural expression. The scheme is considered to be a sympathetic scale and massing which would sit comfortably within the sites and the boundaries. The subtle glaze link referred to between the two houses, for want of a better word, is shown in the middle here. This is considered to be a way of breaking up that massing of the two buildings. The style will be in a contemporary arts and crafts architectural language, which has been encouraged. The application has been referred to Historic England, and they have deferred a decision to London Borough of Haringey. In terms of relationship with the neighbouring heritage assets, this is considered to be acceptable, including the conservation area and the listed buildings. So just on the heritage setting, there is a somewhat varied architectural language in Highgate in the vicinity. You see the top right here, more Victorian style, but with prominent gables, dormer windows, and bold frontages. But the predominant language in the area is the arts and crafts style, seen more so in the top left of the screen, and the existing building, which is with the in the bottom left here. These are within the arts and crafts style, which have the prominent gables, projecting bays, and the large chimneys, and also asymmetrical form of providing that frontage. You can see the existing bays, gables, and chimneys of number 46, part of the application site, which is facing onto Courtney Avenue. So in terms of the proposal, the detailed design would be in the arts and crafts architectural language, but a contemporary take on that. Within that, the design and conservation officers and the QRP have all been supportive of this approach through extensive pre-app discussion. The frontages would be seen as asymmetrical massing, but would still have the appearance of the two houses, and the subtle glaze link that would sit between the predominantly brick frontages. The prominent side gables, projecting bays and chimneys, sweeping pitch roofs and brick detailing of the proposed development would reflect that of the heritage setting, which I just outlined. These will also be in high quality materials, which would be captured in condition. The design of the roof and the height enables there to be solar panel and the lift overrun sitting comfortably within there, so would be hidden from the street and views of the frontage. The defined main entrances for the treatment room and for the main entrance to the care home would further enhance this as appearance of two houses. The proposed building would sit comfortably within the relationship of the context and the massing in either the massing of number 42 as the existing or as that approved development. This would be a modest increase in scale, but would be required for the use, and this is considered to be comfortably accommodated within this setting and still retain settings from side and rear boundaries. You can see on the right there's some details of indicative materials and some brick detailing, as with the detail of the frontage there. Then moving around to the side, this is the view as would be seen from Courtney Avenue. As with the existing building, you can see that there is a prominent bays and chimneys which would sit within this frontage, but they would have a stepping down massing both from in the Hampstead Lane frontage and towards the rear of the site, which will respond to that topography. And as you can see, the slope down is quite drastic. So this would be successful incorporating the stepping down of massing. You would still be able to retain views beyond the rear of the site, of the wooded rear gardens and golf course beyond. The boundary frontages and sides would be screened with boundary edge hedgerows and enhanced planting, as well as a railing on the outside. And you can see here the distinct relationship between the more prominent dwelling existing and proposed on Hampstead Lane to the more subordinate Courtney Avenue to the side. Looking at the rear elevation quickly, here you can see again the rear matting is coherently stepped down and broken up with the use of balconies in recesses, subtle dormers and glazing which would sit comfortably within the roof. There will be relief from the side and rear gardens, and this would, as mentioned previously, this would retain and improve existing landscaping. So in terms of the actual use and the quality of the accommodation, as previously mentioned, it's a managed facility with 24-hour care. It will be fully accessible with lifts within. So there's 2 lifts within the core, and you can see from my cursor, 1 in each core, as well as 1 at the front, which would serve for the refuse and servicing. The layout of the flats of the use is in dementia friendly, both internally and externally in the design, and the applicant has agreed to comply with the Stirling University accreditation, which is at the highest standard for dementia care. The layout of the flats of the private ensuite bathroom bedrooms would be in small groupings. So these would be categorised in sort of similar requirements. You can see the pink areas here, the 3 at the back. Those are communal areas and would provide sort of a varied space for residents. All the communal spaces and bedrooms would have views onto the landscape setting. There will also be on-site facilities and services to the site, and the treatment room in the front of the site would have its own independent access, but would predominantly be used by the end user. The actual end use of that will be determined as this gets built out and in consultation with all stakeholders. The design and layout has been supported by the Haringey Public Health and Supported Housing Officers, who have been in contact with the applicant and in pre-app discussions. So the proposed basement would appear as 2 stories in the front part, but as you see, as it goes to the rear, would appear as a lower ground floor and single-story basement. The lower ground floor accessing directly onto the garden. A detailed basement impact assessment has been submitted, and this has been reviewed externally for the council by structural engineers Campbell Reef. The impact on neighbouring structures has been determined to not exceed Berlin's Category 1, which is very slight. This has been found to be structurally sound, subject to conditions and other legislation. The flood risk remains low, and the site-wide surface water runoff and permeability would be improved as a result of the developments. In terms of the transport impact assessment, there would be the 18 car parking spaces, which you can see in the forecourt here, where there'll be 7 spaces and 11 basement car parking spaces, 2 of which would be for disabled access, and also this would be served to the lift, so it would be fully accessible. In the front part here, you can see there is 2 car lifts, and the access from ground level to the basement. The transport assessment concludes that the site would be capable of accommodating the use. There are 4 existing accesses to the site, two for each house in the existing. 1 here from Courtney Avenue, which acts as a trades-in exit for servicing and deliveries, and this would exit onto Hampstead Lane. A separate access is vehicular access is accommodated for the access to the basement car parking, and that also has an out as well. There will be generous storage provision of bicycles in the basement, and they're also investigating whether to include cycle parking for short stay on the forecourt. The site does have a low P-TOW of 1, but it is noted it does have bus stops within close proximity, one directly out front, out to the front of the building, and just around the corner, which do provide access, regular bus services to Archway, Highgate, Golders Green, and East Finchley tube stations. The applicants would be required to provide a robust sustainable transport travel plan, and this would include shuttle buses which would be linked to shift patterns and take staff to and from the tube station. One designated probably out of these tube stations. In terms of visitors, they would be required to provide a reservation system for bookings. And if the treatment room is to be used by the public, there would be a maximum of 1 patient at a time. So there would be no knock-on impact on transport there. With regard to amenity, the main impact would be on 1 Courtney Avenue to the north of the site and number 42 to the east. Number 42 has been considered in terms of the existing and the proposed building within the BRE daylight and sunlight assessment, which the development has also considered the topography of the site and the sloping to the rear. The only impact from the BRE daylight sunlight assessment was on 2 ground floor secondary windows in the side of number 42 in the existing building, which is in the drawing shown on your right. These would be secondary windows as they'd be served also by the rear as well. There has been an additional study which confirms there will be no significant overshadowing to the rear garden of number 1 Courtney Avenue from the development. So in terms of the nature conservation, the site has a historic area TPO, which does protect existing historic trees on the site. The application would include the removal of 4 mature trees at the rear of the site. These are shown on the left, the red circles, and also a group of 4 smaller trees in the front of the site along the boundary, which are shown at the front here. These have all the 4 at the back have all been graded as low and moderate quality and have been assessed by the tree officer who agrees to the removal. The remaining trees on site would be retained and protected. The boundary fencing and hedging would provide a green perimeter, which would be retained and improved. There'd be no no encroachments on the MOL or that setting. The MOL is Metropolitan Open Land, and the area in question would be Kenwood House Gardens and Highgate Playing Fields. In terms of the proposal, it would provide a replacement of trees, including 10 multi-stem trees and 15 new large trees. There would be a net gain in canopy cover, which would be secured by a condition. The landscaping of the rear has been specifically designed with dementia-friendly use in mind. There would be an improved biodiversity net gain and urban greening factor as a result of the development. Likewise, the improved landscape and permeability and sustainable urban drainage systems would be incorporated into the design. The development has been conditioned so that it would be considerate to any potential bat roostings, net roostings, bird nestings, and subsequently we have added a reference to hedgehogs as well, which have been flagged. So with sustainability, the design has been comprehensively worked through with a strategy of considering new valleys of floors, windows, walls, and roof, cooling, heating, lighting, and thermal bridging. The site offers improvements of 37% carbon emissions. And in terms of green energy, there would be provision of solar PV panels, which are shown on the roof, and air source heat pumps. This would provide a 21% reduction in carbon consumption. There would also be ongoing site monitoring, which would be conditioned. Overall, the site has a carbon shortfall of 22.2 tonnes of carbon per year, and this would be offset for a Section 106 financial obligation. Just to touch on some other issues of the site, it is within an archaeological priority area, and a condition for a scheme of investigation has been attached to the decision. The site would also provide employment opportunities within the new care home as well as in construction, and there would be a Section 106 requirement for 20% local workforce. The layout would be fire safety compliant, and this was considered to be acceptable in terms of secure by design, which would also be conditioned. So in summary, the significant local need for such dementia specialised care home has been successfully made. The high quality arts and crafts contemporary take on design is encouraged, and this is considered to be an appropriate scale within that context. There will be very low, less than substantial harm to the designated heritage assets, including Kenwood House and the conservation area. This has been considered to be acceptable in highways impact terms. The site would offer improved sustainability and energy efficiency, and there would be a net gain of trees and improved landscaping. There are a number of Section 106 obligations attached to the recommendation. Most notably the NHS financial contribution, which would support local resources, private healthcare arrangement for residents, and a site-wide management plan, which would include the use of the treatment room and how that would be used. There'd also be the fact that this would be primarily aimed at Haringey residents through local advertisements and a priority waiting list. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. So CouncillorOvat, and I'll bring you up.
Thank you, Chair. So I've just got two questions. It was mentioned that there's a significant local need and high proportion of older people in Haringey who this type of tenure would appeal to, but there's no data or stats provided. What is the stats and data to corroborate this? And secondly, I understand there is no policy required for affordable housing for care facilities, but is mentioned under 6.1.27 at page 23 of the papers that the assessment of need outlined highlights a significant demand for the proposed use in this area, which is considered to provide a public benefit. But depending on affordability, would this actually benefit the wider public or just an exclusive proportion of the population? Thanks.
Yeah, so in terms of the data, there are the two needs assessments which have been submitted. We have got the extensive data within there. The planning report does refer to specifics from within that and the shortage of bed spaces and the quality of beds therein. And just on the other point about affordability, yeah, in terms of care provision, there is no requirement for having an affordable housing provision. Obviously, within different areas of the borough, different products will appeal to different people. This would potentially be aimed at local people who live in the area existing, and that is part of Section 106, which would encourage people within the borough to use the facility. But yeah, in terms of the actual financing of that, it would be on a needs basis there.
Councillor White.
Thanks. So it's effectively a way of asking Councillor Ovat's second question in a different way and maybe hoping to get a slightly different answer. So we're told that there's no policy requirement for affordable provision of beds in care homes, which means that according to officers, 66 beds, specialist dementia care in this care home in this proposed development are considered acceptable in policy terms. So I suppose my question was, is there no policy requirement because there's no need, or is it that there is a need but that need is satisfied otherwise than in through the planning process, or is it that actually there is a need that it isn't satisfied and that actually there's a glaring lack in either our policy or national policy or London-wide policy that maybe we can try to address through the process of agreeing a new local plan?
Thanks, Councillor. Yeah, I'll start on that, but maybe Robbie or John want to talk about the wider implications. But I suppose the key thing with this is that you're looking at local needs. So the idea would be that obviously there are different products which are being offered and different ranges within that. This would be an affordable use within the Highgate area if you own a house in Highgate, I suppose. But that may differ if there was a care home which was on land with less value in other parts of the borough. But yeah, in terms of that, I suppose that's where you meet the local needs rather than a one size fits all sort of solution, as with any private housing.
Yep. So on affordable housing policy, firstly, because it's a different use class to conventional housing, affordable housing policy just does not apply. That's the main reason. And in terms of affordable need for older people's housing, that's considered in the round through things like the strategic housing market assessment, which will inform the emerging new local plan. But it's still difficult to establish a policy for affordable older people because of it's outside the housing definition, and national planning policy framework talks about affordable housing for the use class of housing. So yes, national policy restricts what we can do in terms of establishing affordable housing for older people. And just going back, one question to Councillor Ovat's point about the sort of the need and the figure and data. Just on a London plan level, there's a target, a benchmark for Haringey of 110 units per year for specialist older people's housing. So that just gives you an idea of the quantum of the need that's been identified in Haringey in the London plan, which is part of the development plan. Thank you.
Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Chair. My first comment is this, that this would be, I think, better presented to the committee if we had much smaller size chunks, if you like, to consider. You've got a complex thing here with lots of headings, and the introduction goes on for quite some time. It would be better for panel, the committee, who are not planning professionals, just to take it much slower and be able to concentrate much more on the detail rather than trying to lump everything together, which is customary for this committee to approach matters. I don't necessarily agree with it, and I said so before. I just had the opportunity to say so again at some stage. But I don't understand what's the need for the demolition. It may not be you to answer this, but the developers, I'm not sure. But I can't understand the argument for demolition. Talk about arts and crafts and other fine features of that type of architecture, but then you turn around in the next sentence and knock it down. What is the point of it? That doesn't make any sense. Just a slight side issue in terms of what people just be arguing about in terms of provisions for the elderly. I was told that St. Luke's development in Muswell Hill, that some older person was allocated accommodation there. A splendid setting, I thought it to be, and the person said from Tottenham, I don't want to be stuck in Muswell Hill. I want to be in Tottenham, where my friends are, where people I've lived donkey years beside. So I'm not sure about this argument about provision for the elderly. I'm not sure the elderly, and certainly you've got no representation.
Oh, right, we're back on. Okay. So can you address the issue about the why the need for demolition, please?
Was that it, Councillor, as well? Yeah. So the in terms of demolition, the case has been made for that in terms of the actual end user. Floor to ceiling heights in the new building would need to be changed. We did investigate initially potential for retaining facade, but in terms of the actual quality of the building and the constraints that would have on the new use, it just wouldn't provide the high quality mechanical ventilation, window alignments, that sort of thing, which just wouldn't be compatible with that. But that was something that we did investigate in the first instance. You also made the point about why would someone from Tottenham want to move to Muswell Hill, and I think that's the point I was making before about the locality. You could say likewise, people in Highgate might not want to move away to other parts of the country, and that is why it's really important to try and get those care homes within that locality so that you sort of stay connected to the networks you have.
Thank you. Councillor Corley Harrison.
Just want some clarification from the reports. It says English Heritage have been consulted on the impact of demolition and redevelopment on the site and blah, blah, blah. Their response confirms they do not consider it necessary to comment. But then there's a submission which is English Heritage wishes to object to the demolition of 44 to 46 Hampstead Lane and the erection of a 4-storey dementia care home. So I don't understand.
Is that English Heritage or is it the Kenwood Trust, which is linked to? I think they've got an affiliation with them, but it's not actually from English Heritage.
So what's the difference?
Yeah. So these two organisations were once one, but have since uncoupled. So Historic England are our statutory consultee on heritage matters. English Heritage manage the historic buildings, such as Kenwood House. So one is sort of similar to the National Trust, or as a sort of landowner and historic custodian, and the other is now a sort of statutory function and expertise that we rely on for heritage matters.
Councillor Worrell.
Thank you. Please, could you just clarify on the comments from Historic England why on the previous application that was withdrawn, I think Historic England gave advice on the architecture, but then with this application, they felt it unnecessary to give advice. Could you explain that?
I'm not actually sure they did give advice on the they gave advice on archaeology. So it could be confusing having the two branches of Historic England there. But yeah, they did comment on the archaeology and just said that they would like to see some surveys in terms of the archaeological impact, but not in terms of commenting on design at all. It was just a site clearance sort of issue.
So do their comments on the archaeology apply to this application as well?
Yeah. Those comments were to do with the sort of demolition and rebuilding. That was a larger scheme, so this is obviously going to have a smaller impact on that, but the same condition has been applied anyway.
Councillor Bevan.
Yeah, when I walked up the street over the weekend, I mean, you can't see these houses. If you walk up the street, there's a great tall brick walls in front of the houses. They're not really, unless you peep through a little gap to see what you want to see. I'm asking, will the new walls for the new development, is it intended to try and hide the development? Because I think it would be nice if it was sort of normal, where you could see the grounds, and rather than it being hidden away. So I'm just got a query about that. And then another query is, I'm assuming these are obviously going to be very, very expensive places. So they talk about a waiting list, but if they haven't got a waiting list and they've got empty places, they're obviously going to be used by people outside of Haringey. But will the council have the capacity to purchase resident for people like they do in some schemes, or is the cost of this above any limit which would prevent the council from doing that?
So the first point's about the screening from the hedgerow on the edges. Yeah.
What street is it on?
Hampstead Lane.
When I walked up Hampstead Lane, the houses are here. Between the pavement and the houses, there's two tall brick walls. You can hardly see the houses. They're sort of hidden. And I'm just wondering, it would be nice if this home wasn't hidden, that it was open and people could see.
Yeah, there would still for these sites specifically, there would be some permeability. It would be railings, and within the gated entrances there would be railings. I think a couple of the gates at the moment are solid, so you do get less sort of visual permeability of the site from that. But the idea of having the railings and the hedgerow and planting behind is also a means of encouraging biodiversity and ecology for that regard as well. So it is also potentially a way of softening that impact, but not in terms of hiding it, just as a means of respecting the natural setting there.
Yeah, so the hedgerow wouldn't have to be 10 feet high like the current brick walls. That's they'd be lower, so it'd be more open and natural.
Yeah, it would be natural in terms of the heights and that sort of thing. It's going to be more or less what they have at the moment. So I'd assume that we will have the condition on the boundary treatment, so we can take that into consideration as well.
And you did ask a question about the cost, how expensive?
Yeah, I know the council sometimes purchase accommodation for people who cannot afford it. Would they be able to do this in this scheme, or would this scheme be so expensive it would breach some guidelines where the council couldn't actually make use of this facility for some of the residents who can't afford it themselves but actually need it very badly?
Yeah, so I have done a bit of research and numerous pre-apps with the housing team on these. So I've got a bit of an insight into the way these care homes work, and rather than us purchasing it per se, what we have to do at the moment, and this is highlighted within some of the studies that have been undertaken, is that they will send people outside of the borough if there isn't a supply within. So you're quite right to point to the cost of sending people, of us accommodating people within this care home, and that would be a factor for us if we were determining whether or not it would be best used to send someone outside of borough or to this place if that were to be accommodated.
Okay, thank you. So no more questions. Okay, right. So we'll come to the objectors. So we have James Leoff, Matt Brewer from the Courtney Avenue Homeowners Association. If you could sit in, and Shahabuddin Jafari. Yeah. So if you could, okay, all right. Thank you. So you have, all right, I'll let you sit down first. Thank you. Thanks for coming. So you have 3 minutes each. Who wants to start? Okay, and I will indicate when your 3 minutes is up, or you should, yeah. Anyway, so off you go. Thank you.
Good evening. I speak for the Compton Avenue residents for whom the proposal represents a significant concern in terms of the loss of existing housing, scale and form of development and impact on the area. I'd like to start off by addressing the loss of family houses. The proposals simply do not comply with the policy DM10. The proposals result in the unacceptable loss of family housing. The policy requires existing family housing to be maintained, and the provision of a care home should not be at the expense of good quality existing dwellings which contribute to meeting a priority housing need. The proposals further are also non-compliant with policy DM15. Specialist forms of accommodation are to be located where there is good public transport accessibility, also close to shops, services and community facilities. This location it is quite starkly the opposite. There is a lack of local services, zero amenities, and very poor public transport, further highlighted by the lowest possible PTAL rating of only 1. For reference, if you are to walk by foot to any of the nearest tube stations, it's half an hour for a decent pace walker. Buses, you can get 1 bus to Golders Green that runs infrequently. Other buses to access the other stations, you need 2 or 3 changes. Simply, public transport is not a medium in this area. The proposal for a significant care home operation is out of keeping with the residential character of the area. The proposals do not include any justification for the scale of the operation proposed. The proposal, again, does not comply with Strategic Policy 1. The site is identified to be within an area of limited change, where proposals are to meet local development needs only. The application documents, however, seek to support the proposal on the basis of identified borough-wide need. Policy requires such need to be located in a growth or areas of change. The nature and scale of the development is therefore not appropriate in this location or in conformity with the development plan policy and spatial strategy. The local plan demands that development in areas of limited change must not change the character of these areas and must respect the historic significance and character of its surroundings. Again, and also providing environmental improvements and other local benefits. The proposals clearly do not deliver against these requirements and is non-compliant with the development plan as a result. Now on the topic of loss of existing buildings in the conservation area, the loss of existing buildings in this conservation area also go against policies SP12, DM9, and their demolition would fail to meet the requirements of the Act and NPPF. The Council's conservation area character appraisal is clear that the existing properties on this site are not negative contributors to the conservation area, and their style, form, and presence do not detract from the character. The proposed design is in stark contrast to what the church commissioners who tasked in the 1920s the famous arts and crafts architect Walter Quinnell to build in this area.
Can you just wind up?
Sure.
Can you finish? How much long have you got? Have you got 1 sentence?
There was 1 paragraph left. It's a short paragraph.
Go on then.
On the topic of parking, there's 47 visitors at the site daily. Given that only 7 spaces are provided for visitors and the local heath that currently is full, if you go out on any nice weather day, there simply is not the provision on the local area to support the parking requirements. Therefore, I do urge you to respect the key areas of the Council's development plan, policies and national legislation. This demolition is simply unacceptable and I encourage you to deny it permission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lev. So, Mr. Brewer, you have 3 minutes as well, Mr. Brewer.
Good evening. I represent the Courtney Avenue Homeowners Association and the Highgate Society. Residents were extremely surprised to understand that this application was to be reported to committee this month, given the significant issues and the policy non-compliances identified. It's impossible to address all of the issues in just 3 minutes, so I will focus on the key areas of harm and try and avoid the valid planning matters that James has raised, all of which we endorse. The site is located in a very sensitive location in terms of the conservation area, MOL, existing TPOs and open space designations. The harmful impact of the demolition on the conservation area, as highlighted by James, will be further exacerbated by the overbearing scale of the proposed replacement building. It will unacceptably harm the character and appearance of the conservation area in violation of policies SP12, DM9, DH1 and DH2. Key characteristics of the conservation area will be destroyed. Whilst there are large individual properties existing along Hampstead Lane, the introduction of this single built element of 4 stories stretching across the entire width of 2 plots will be out of character completely with the existing individual houses. The proposed scheme is at odds with the heritage context. It neither enhances or preserves the character of the conservation area. It erodes the heritage interest, and there are no significant heritage or community benefits that would outweigh the level of harm. The proposed scheme represents a significant overdevelopment of the site and is not compliant with policies SB11, DM1, DM6 and DM7. The proposed scale is overbearing, out of keeping. It will have an unacceptable impact on townscape and the local environment of residents. The 4-storey height, together with the site levels, which are set up above Courtney Avenue, with a single continuous block, does not respect the local character. It's inappropriate in its context. Does not achieve a high quality of design. Key design elements of existing properties, including the provision of single-storey links between building elements, of protecting existing trees, have been disregarded. The referenced bridge link provides no discernible break in the massing or allows views through. Furthermore, the proposals are non-compliant with London Plan Policy G3, Policy SP13, DM20, OS1 and OS2. The proposals will have a negative impact on the openness of the adjacent areas of MOL due to the scale, height and proximity of the new development and will result in the unacceptable loss of protected trees. This is unnecessary. It doesn't need to be accepted if a reduced scale and form of development was to be proposed. The arrangements for vehicular and pedestrian access to the site are unacceptable. Whilst the site has an existing vehicular access for one dwelling off a private road, the proposals will significantly intensify this use, with the application identifying potential for 47 visitor trips a day using the Courtney Avenue entrance. The application should be amended to remove any vehicular entrance or exit from the site on Courtney Avenue and remove the new pedestrian access proposed, for which there is no right of access. We urge members to apply the policies of the development plan and refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brewer. So we now have Mr. Jafari. Yes, and you have 3 minutes as well, sir.
I'm Shahabuddin Jafari on behalf of number 2 Courtney Avenue. So based on what I've studied from the right of light and sound tracking, the second adjacent property to the proposed development is our premises that shows significant amount of overshadowing and overlooking, especially during the winter time. So I have got a very simple program that it's publicly available, and it easily shows that during the daylight we have overshadowing from the proposed development over our premises. And this will disturb our privacy, and you can easily find that the proposed development has a very larger size than existing one, and it can be many windows which are located on the second floor, which although obscured, but they can have an overlooking to our premises. So we recently gotten a permission approval to extension to the back garden, and there are new windows that they didn't have a look when the surveyor do the daylight and overlooking studies. So I just want to raise my concerns about these problems. Actually, the other concerns of our family who will reside in these premises very soon is that as Courtney Avenue is under a deep slope from the up from the Kenwood up to the end of the Courtney Avenue, it's almost 20 meters difference between height. So I didn't see that proper groundwater flow assessment done below 20 meters. What I've so far done is just below that, and then I think it will be have a severe effect on and down to the Courtney Avenue and the groundwater flow on the existing premises. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so committee, if you would answer questions from the committee. So Councillor Ogar.
Sorry, I forgot your name, the one in the middle.
Matthew.
Matthew. Okay. You mentioned there's no community benefits that outweigh harm, but do you not think that dementia care home a community benefit considering the demand for this type of facility in the borough?
I don't consider that that facility would outweigh the loss of two family dwellings that are located within a conservation area and aren't considered to be negative contributors to that conservation area. They were constructed at the same time as much of the arts and craft area of that area and form an intrinsic part of it. The need that has been demonstrated is a borough-wide need. As James said in his representations, this is located in an area which should only be providing significant development for local need, not borough-wide need. And again, therefore, in terms of meeting borough-wide need, it is not, in my view, fulfilling that requirement of an overall community benefit for this local area.
Councillor Brown.
I was actually going to ask the exact same question as Councillor Over. There will be need in Highgate for dementia care. Just because it's Highgate, there's going to be need, and as such, I don't understand the argument that there's no community benefit in providing dementia care. And the other thing is that two very large family houses, while I do appreciate the significance of losing the facade, but it is only two very large family houses.
Yes, to 2 points. We're not suggesting that there is no public benefit. The comment that we're making is that there isn't sufficient public benefit that would outweigh either, it might outweigh, say, the loss of two family units, but it wouldn't outweigh the combined loss of two family units and the heritage impact of the loss of two properties within a conservation area. It isn't substantial enough in our view. Secondly, this this proposal isn't an isolated care home. There are a number of care home facilities, including dementia care facilities, which are existing within the area, already existing on Bishop's Road. That need is already being met within the Highgate area, and the assessment that has been done, as I say, focuses on the borough-wide need and doesn't demonstrate a local need, which is what your policies require it to do.
Thank you. Councillor Worrell.
Thank you. The first two speakers, I think you sort of mainly focused on the heritage impact and also the kind of additional vehicular stress with more car journeys coming to the site. I was wondering if you also had concerns similar to the third speaker about overlooking, if that was relevant to your arguments as well.
Yes, certainly within our representation that was made on the application, and as I alluded to, there are other issues, but we wanted to make sure, obviously, that we covered as much as possible, as well as the property at number 2. Number 1, Courtney Avenue, located directly behind the property, is a significantly lower height to the application dwelling itself. Will be impacted in terms of overlooking, but also have a significantly higher 4-storey continuous block of development affecting its outlook, which is mainly to the north on the side of that dwelling. So we certainly do have concerns over the amenity impacts, but apart from the impact on number 2 as well, the wider concerns are more generally around the impact on the conservation area, the overdevelopment of the site, the scale, and the potential impacts in terms of those movements and the lack of parking that is being delivered given the inaccessibility of this site by public transport. Thank you.
I would add that on the drainage issue, there is a hidden river that runs beneath the 2 roads. And at present, whenever a house has been granted permission for a basement, the house next to it floods the garden next to it and so forth. And this carries on. So if you go to Hampstead Lane any day when it rains, you'll see Hampstead Lane flooded. Go 3-4 days later, still flooded. So we don't believe that the actual drainage surveys commissioned accurately reflect the impact of such a substantial basement going in, which would impact the water table to such an extent.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Corley-Harris.
Thanks. Yeah, this proposal has been in development for quite a while. I'm just wondering what engagement you've had with the developers, if at all, and whether they had made any concessions following that engagement with residents groups, and then also whether you would have considered a retention of the existing buildings, or at least their facade, with an extension to provide the care home setting as acceptable in terms of the kind of the heritage aspect that you were talking about.
Personally, there's been no representations from the applicants towards myself, residents of my road. I do know people in the local area have spoken to, but there's been no fruitful outcomes of those conversations. If it was an extension and you retained the facades, subject to the mass, the scale, the impact, again, there's a lot of issues that I believe do not have been accurately addressed in their application. And again, if you're going back to affordability and who it's actually targeting, it doesn't seem to be targeting the most pressing need in the council of those who actually would need access to those beds. So it's a multi-cavited problem.
Do you, just to clarify that, are you representing an organisation, or do you?
So I am representing all the homeowners on Compton Avenue, so the other road, parallel.
Okay, thank you. Right, so that's, so there's no more questions. So thank you very much. If you would kindly take your seats. Thank you. And then we have the applicant, supporters, applicant, if you would. So I'll let you sit down. Sorry, so it's Stuart Minty, yes. Mr. Minty and Andy Goodchild, yes. Okay, thank you. Thank you for coming. So you have 9 minutes between you. Starts now.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Hopefully we won't need the full 9 minutes. So thank you, Chair, and to members of the committee for allowing us to have this opportunity to address you tonight. Also like to thank the, or commend members for your planning department, who've been incredibly helpful and responsive throughout the long journey that we've been on with this planning application. So my name's Stuart Minty and I'm a planning consultant representing the applicant Care Concern Group, who are a leading operator of care homes in the UK. As you've heard, our proposal here is to provide a high quality care accommodation following demolition of what exists on the site. Our new building will provide 66 units of accommodation and will largely accommodate patients diagnosed with Alzheimer's, dementia and other neurological disorders in a quality environment, and it will all be regulated by the Care Quality Commission. So in terms of principle and use, your local plan makes it clear the council needs to promote the most efficient use of land. Housing is obviously the priority land use in the borough, and our proposal accords with the government objective of helping boosting supply by providing identified need for older persons housing. I'll go on to say that existing under-occupied family homes in the local area will become available as a result of the proposed development, therefore making a better use of the existing housing stock, which will assist the council in their need to progress and maintain the 5-year housing land supply. This will also help to avoid situations where pressure is applied to approve housing developments that is only partially compliant or not compliant with policies for the supply of housing. So in terms of our scheme, it's been designed by award-winning architects, and we propose a built form of 2 asymmetrical buildings with a glazed link visually, connecting the 2 existing parts of the site. The footprint will sit well back from the highway frontage, and space will be maintained, as you've seen, along the west and northern side and the rear boundaries. Now, we consider this will preserve the appearance of the building within its large plot. The scheme has been amended several times before and during the course of the application, and also to align with comments from your quality review panel and also your planning, design and conservation officers. The end design is intended to emulate arts and crafts styles architectural features such as fenestration details, contrasting brickwork panels have all been included to create points of visual interest, and this has been carefully considered throughout the design process. And as per your committee report, is fully supported by your officers. Landscaping is also very, very important to the success of this scheme. And so in terms of character and appearance, we've submitted a detailed landscaping plan that's been developed and highlights important landscape features such as hedges and trees, which will largely be retained and factored into the design evolution of the scheme. The site is well screened by mature landscaping, which will be strengthened by additional planting where necessary. And so no significant trees are being removed, and those that are lost, which you have heard, there are some being lost in the centre of the site, substantially more will be planted in their place. Before I finish, to say our scheme is a sustainable development as defined by the NPPF and accords with national policy. It will provide much needed care home accommodation, as you've heard, and the officer's report has a lengthy section in the middle, which I haven't got in front of me, that talks about the need and assessment, and we've done 2 very substantial needs assessments. And they will contribute, this care home accommodation will contribute towards fixing a broken care system that's experienced both locally and nationally. Finally, to sort of bookend my thoughts, I would also highlight the suite of Section 106 benefits that the officers have put forward. The applicant is fully committed to these, and they include a substantial financial contribution to support NHS, private healthcare arrangements for residents, and importantly, given the location, priority use for Haringey residents. I will hand you over to Andy Goodchild, who is the project architect. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee, for allowing me to speak this evening. My name is Andy Goodchild, and I'm a director of Wolf Architects, and we are the lead designers for the application. And we are specialists in residential and care home, and we work sort of extensively within the UK and abroad. Simply speaking, people need care homes when they can no longer capable of looking after themselves. Often these are people who have suffered a fall, and they cannot cope with stairs, and they end up in an NHS hospital bed without a suitable place to be discharged to. Ageing leads to other problems, such as fragility and dementia, which can prevent people undertaking the most basic tasks, let alone living a full life. Family members and outside carers simply cannot always cope and provide the full-time care that's needed. We understand the desperate need to reduce the burden on the overstretched NHS hospital beds. 1 in 7 beds are currently occupied by an elderly person needing care that could be provided outside a hospital environment. Underinvestment nationally has led to a shortage of care beds, a reduction over 100,000 beds since the mid-90s, despite a vast increase in the size of the older population. And those, many of those that are left have a poor reputation due to being no longer fit for purpose. What we are proposing here is a high quality facility that will improve the lives of residents over what can be offered at home, providing them with excellent 24/7 nursing care with an environment that will encourage physical, mental and social activity, thus prolonging not just life, but quality of life. The site is a rarity in Haringey as it offers residents the opportunity to utilise Kenwood House and the Heath for additional physical activity. The home exceeds minimum size standards for bedrooms, and the communal areas provided will give a multiple type of area: living rooms, dining rooms, quiet rooms, a cinema and activities rooms to encourage residents to partake in as active and stimulating life as possible. And this is sadly missing from when care at home is provided. The home has also been designed to accommodate residents with more demanding care needs, such as dementia. And the University of Stirling's guidance has been adopted within the overall design, and their recommendations regarding wayfinding, lighting, colour and contrast, fixtures and fittings will be incorporated throughout the development. The Landscape Architect Design Gardens is also a dementia-friendly garden, accommodating a circular route with multiple stopping places and points of interest along the route. The plants have been specially selected to provide year-round colour, changing scents and varying interests to the residents all year round. The secure boundary fences are screened with planting to avoid the feeling of enclosure. We believe that this is an outstanding opportunity to give elderly residents of Haringey a way to live their final years to their fullest potential. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Could you just switch off your mic? So I've got, right, Councillor Buxton.
Thank you, Chair. Two questions. So will there be any efforts to reuse the materials from the demolition of the previous buildings to reduce the embodied carbon of the build? If so, what? If not, why? And secondly, do you have an estimate of the amount of energy that you expect to be provided by the solar panels as your as a percentage of your annual energy consumption?
So in terms of reusing the materials, I think substantially we can reuse the brick. I think we've discussed that before in design. The mixed multi-slot brick that we're proposing to use could incorporate some of the existing brickwork. Just touching on sort of why we can't use the existing buildings, obviously that would be a starting point, and we certainly looked at that, but because of the articulation needed in terms of providing minimum sized bedrooms, that the existing window orientation and layouts just simply don't work for a care home, unfortunately. And also wanting to provide sort of full height glazing, so sort of bed bound or wheelchair bound residents can actually get a full outlook through the windows, again means that you can't reuse those existing facades, unfortunately. And then in terms of the actual use of energy with the solar panels, I'm afraid I can't answer directly. I don't know the in-depth details of the energy sustainability report that we had done externally. But yeah, I mean, what we've tried to do is use the roof form and the additional height which the sort of style of the building sort of gives us, means that we've got large flat roof space that we can accommodate all the air source heat pumps and all the solar PV within those wells, and so they're not visible.
Thank you, Councillor Worrell.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. Firstly, about the 4 mature trees that are going to be felled. I appreciate there's going to be a net gain, but obviously takes a while for a tree to become mature again. So were there any efforts to explore avoiding having to remove those? What was the reason they couldn't be saved? My second question, I understand there are kind of a lot of challenges in the social care workforce at the moment. How confident are you that you're going to be able to staff this? Are the plans for it to be a living wage employer? My third question, just about the flooding and drainage that was mentioned by some of the objectors, in light of what they've said about the secret river and the flooding of basements, are you confident that that's been thoroughly taken into account? And just finally, about the expected 47 car journeys a day, I know that the estimation has been that at the peak there will be a need for 10 parking spaces, which is just about covered by what's available. Is it the plan that there are going to be kind of set visiting times for external visitors? And has that been kind of taken into account? And also has the sort of after work rush been taken into account and that sort of thing? Thank you.
I'll start the answers those, and I might need Andy to come in. So trees, very much so. We wanted to keep all of the trees. The four trees we're losing at the back, 3 of them are of low value. 1 of them is of moderate value. But the main rationale for losing them was so we could have the dementia-friendly garden. And I was going to let Andy talk about that because he knows a lot more about it, being an architect. But that was the rationale between the back. We're losing 4 at the front, but they're of low quality. And we're putting back around 15 trees. So there's a net increase. Good question on the maturity. I think we're happy to put back sort of semi-mature. There's opportunities for doing that, and I think the planning conditions pick them up, but I'll let the officers maybe confirm that. The last point about the transport, there's a good section in the report, 6 8.17 that talks about method of travel to work data, which we've done from the operator given their previous models. We anticipate that 40% will drive a car to this site. There are shifts, so people will come and go at a certain time, but we feel we want our site to be able to accommodate the right level of parking for it. We don't want to overspill onto surrounding streets. We do have a workplace travel plan as well, where we'll be promoting the use of public transport for the staff. Appointments, I'm not entirely sure, but I think they are definitely on a booking system. So I'm not sure if there are set times, but there is a booking system to make sure that that works in tandem with the parking arrangements. You okay to pick up the dementia garden?
Sure. Yeah. So just further on the garden, one of the main aspects of people who suffer with dementia is unfortunately they have a sort of desire to sort of walk and wander, and if you create a sort of enclosed environment, that can cause stress levels to rise, and so lots of research has been done to show that sort of encouraging circular routes through gardens or even within the building mean that this sort of reduces levels of stress, and so we tried to incorporate that within the space, and that sort of design sort of led away from having the sort of trees in the middle of the site and push them to more of the periphery. Just touching on the flooding, I think, which was another aspect. Obviously, we've had sort of detailed SUDS assessment and flood risk assessment done. I think, you know, the water that's perceived on Hampstead Lane in terms of the surface water, that's exactly what it is. It's surface water runoff, which is coming down from Kenwood generally. In terms of the assessment that we've had done, what we've done is try to improve surface water runoff. So the SUDS assessment that we've had done and the design that we've put into the overall scheme shows that there's actually improvement in that sort of absorption of surface water runoff. So we're hoping that, you know, actually we should improve the situation rather than make it worse.
If you can pick up on the staffing, do you anticipate that you'll be able to staff this? And will you be a living wage employer?
The operator that's we've been working alongside currently has 52, I think, care homes nationally. So they're an established operator, and so they've already got the staffing in place, and sort of understand the nature of the business, that they're not a new sort of startup business. So they operate, as I say, all over the UK. So I think in terms of the staffing levels, they'll be able to achieve that, and we'll have flexibility to sort of bring staff in from other facilities as well. In terms of the sort of general setup, because I think it touches on some of the other things, they are more of a sort of, I think, if we say a more sort of mid-range operator. They're not comparable to some of the operators that are sort of referred to on the Bishops Avenue. So in terms of affordability, it should be more affordable than some of the other operators. And also, it comes back to quantum. You know, that one of the reasons why we started off with an application for 80 beds, which we've reduced down to 66 now, was that the more beds that we can provide, the more affordable it becomes. Is that simple sort of mechanics of sort of affordability with more units. So, you know, at the moment they're saying that the 66 beds that we're proposing is not as much as they would like, but is an affordable level, and that's where we've sort of settled on.
Okay, and I think, well, the living wage was about the level of pay that the staff will get, that they will be, that was, I think, Councillor, wasn't it, so that they paid the London living wage?
I very much guess so. I don't honestly know the answer to that. It's not really my area of expertise, but I would hope so.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's. Do you want to?
It was just a couple of points of clarification, if I could add. In terms of the loss of trees, just Councillor Worrell, worth drawing your attention on page 61 to condition 5, part J, which specifies that any new trees and shrubs to be planted together should provide at least a net gain of tree canopy. So we have been specific about that. So that means that the total number should address your concern, whether that's a sort of a mixture of mature and semi-mature. It will depend on what can be brought onto site. And we don't have a policy requiring London Living Wage in these sort of facilities. So there would be a planning requirement to deliver that.
Thank you. So I've got Councillor Rice and Councillor Brennan. Councillor Rice?
I simply want to hear from the developers. Why is it not possible to refurbish the current houses? Why knock them down? I can't understand the argument of demolition.
I think that has been addressed, but if you can just quickly, well, it has, but can you just quickly clarify again? But
yeah, just to clarify again, the needs of the layout for a care home in terms of having the bedrooms of a certain size, certain minimum size, and then how that creates a sort of regular sort of pattern of windows doesn't work with the existing elevation. I think we also mentioned the floor to ceiling heights aren't adequate within the existing buildings to provide the sort of mechanical services and everything else that will be required. We did look at it hard and would have liked to, but again, the other benefit of building new is that we can, exceed the sort of environmental performance in terms of the thermal envelope that we're producing can be far better, and so it uses less energy. So all of those sort of factors fed into the fact that we felt it was appropriate for the demolition.
Thank you. So Councillor Brennan.
So you did partly answer my question, I think accidentally, because you referred to the NHS, relieving pressure on the NHS, but from earlier discussions, it sounded like people thought it was not going to be affordable in that case, it sounded like it's not going to relieve pressure on the NHS because it's only going to be for very wealthy people who can afford a premium. So is it actually going to be the sort of place that can relieve pressure that normal people can go to?
So as I say, the operator is not one of these super high-end operators. In terms of how it will relieve pressure, the fact that there's such a shortage of beds at the moment means that the reason why the people in hospital haven't got anywhere to go is just a lack across the whole market. And the fact is that if somebody who could afford to pay more to go to this type of facility, if they end up needing nursing care or have dementia, and then putting pressure back into the existing system, into the NHS system, because they haven't got anywhere else to go, then that's adding a pressure. At the moment, we need stock across all levels, high end, mid end, bottom end. Unfortunately, at the moment, it's being driven by the private sector. The government haven't got a solution to social care. Ideally, it would be affordable for everyone and it would be free to everyone. But at the moment, there isn't those systems in place. But I do believe provision of this type of facility will relieve pressure because the people who can afford to pay will go there, and that will free up beds in other areas.
Thank you. Councillor Corley-Harrison.
Thanks. Yeah, very similar question to the objectors. What engagement have you had, given the objectives that have been presented, in particular with local organisations, so the Highgate CAC, the Neighbourhood Forum, and also direct neighbours, and then what concessions you may have made as a result of those, or development management forums, etc.
Okay, I suppose we were lucky in a way that we had 2 applications, and that we had the feedback from the first application, which helped us guide not just from what the officers were saying, but also what the local people were indicating as main concerns. So we've got significantly less opposition to this application than we did do the first one. Alongside that, obviously, we started out with the series of meetings with some of the groups, This was a few years ago and I haven't got the details in front of me, but we did do a statement of community involvement for the first application, which detailed which groups we met with, which neighbours and associations we reached out to. Some responded, some didn't, you know, as is normal, and we did exactly the same for the second application.
Thank you. So any more questions from the committee? No? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So we now move to the recommendation, and I'd like Robbie McNaught to confirm the recommendation with a summary of any changes.
Thank you, Chair. So no changes to the recommendation following the discussion. So recommendation is to grant subject to conditions on the section 106 as set out in the report and the addendum. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move to the vote. All those in favour, please show.
That is unanimous.
Okay, so that's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Right, so we move on to item 9, and that's the update on the major proposals. That's pages 183 to 198 in the pack. That's for noting. If you've got any questions, direct them to Robbie McNaught. And Councillor Bevan, I think you want to say something under this item.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention about Rosa Luxemburg Court, because you might remember that several meetings ago I made an observation about the state of those lobbies. They were so unattractive and unwelcoming for the residents to go in. They were totally brilliant white. All the lift areas were getting marked after a few weeks. And after that meeting, the developer came up to me and said he agreed totally with me and he'd like to change them and do some improvements, and they would pay for the works. So subsequent to that, the developers and Haringey Council met. They involved the residents and they have completely transformed those lobbies. So I would suggest if any of you are near Rosa Luxemburg, pop down and have a look in those lobbies, because they could be in Mayfair, basically, you know. So I would like also to suggest that if we have another planning visits in the future, we could just pop down there and have a look at them ourselves, because it's amazing the transformation that they've done there. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Well, yeah, I think a lot of that credit goes to colleagues in housing who've been able to resolve the issues there, and I think it would be an interesting opportunity to visit that and discuss some of the issues that they've had there and what learnings there have been from that. But great to hear the positive feedback.
Councillor Corley-Harrison.
John, could you circulate some before and after photos or planning, perhaps?
If the planning service can't provide before, I think I might be able to find some in my thousands of deleted emails.
Okay, well, thank you, John, for saying that, because I'm sure that people are very interested to know that there has been an improvement after, especially if it was raised at this committee. So thank you. If we've got any before and after photographs, you'll circulate them. Okay, all right, thank you. So we're now on to item 10, which is new items of urgent business, of which there's none. And item 11 is we've got the date of the next meeting as the 22nd of May, but that meeting isn't going ahead. So this is the last meeting of this actual committee then. Yeah. Okay, so, well, we've had a good year. Thank you all very much. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thanks to the, sorry, and thanks to the officers as well for all your hard work. I should have said that. I do apologise, but you're not going anywhere. So you've got it. You've got us for. We've got me for another year anyway. So okay, thank you. Thanks. Close the meeting.